Have you guys seen Kylo Ren's lightsaber?
Yeah, man, that thing's weird looking.
No, it's not. It's awesome. Here, let me go see if I can find it. I'll show it to you.
My backpack's got jets. Well, I'm Boba, the Fett.
Star Wars, nothing but Star Wars.
Stop it, please.
It's Discard to Reroll. We're a podcast about a little dice and card game we like to call Star Wars Destiny. I'm your host, Mr. Chip, and thank you for listening. I feel like it's been so long, but yet it hasn't been. Either way, we're together right now, and we had some things planned for tonight, but I want to switch that up because there's a more serious topic we want to discuss tonight, and I definitely want your feedback on that. I'm sure it's going to get some of you talking, and the way to do that is join us in the conversation over at the Twitter. It's Discard TO Reroll, or head over to the Facebook page, which you know, I'll tell you what, Facebook's a great community as well. And you can just type in Discard to Reroll. We come up and you give us our thoughts. Just put it underneath the episode that posts and just go ahead and have at it. Tell me why I'm crazy, why I'm wrong, why you think that that the topic we're going to talk about tonight is or is not important. If you see that it's been an issue for you and around the game, I definitely want to hear your take on that. But let's jump right into it. We were going to talk a little bit about some other formats for Destiny, and I think if we have time, we still will. But one of the things that I definitely want to mention tonight is around player safety. Now, something happened at one of the regionals that came up, and I want to make sure I have all of the information correct. This was in Denver, where this went down, and I've got some details on it. This was the Denver Regional. It was March 17th at Total Escape Games. This is the location that it happened. Now, if you were there, I'd love to hear your take on what went down. But it really is less about the actual incident that happened there and more about the state of the game and what can be done. All right. But basically, this is from the place called Reddit. I don't know if you've heard of that, but there can be a very lively discussion that happens within Reddit. And on Reddit, there was a post relative to what happened in Denver. And there was 44 people. This is by Rusty T, by the way, to make sure I give him credit because I'll read some of this stuff verbatim. But again, it's less about calling out the person and people involved in this, but more about just the state of the game and in terms of what I think can help. Because I have a suggestion, and I'd love to know if you think this is possible or, you know, where does Destiny stand in this whole mix? So 44 people were at the regional in Denver, and it sounds like it was held well. There's some questions that I have around how things were calculated. Now, you know that if you follow the show at all, I had a little bit of a Destiny temper tantrum after what happened. I was in Rochester, and a lot of you heard about that or actually came out, which was fantastic, and those people know who they are. And you know, you reflect on those events, and it's not about winning; it's about meeting and making part of the community and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you know, you want to be successful as a player when you're doing it, and so of course I wasn't. But the things I've learned were things about in Destiny like strength of schedule. That's crazy. Like, you need to know a lot of math to figure that out. And there is a formula. And if you go to the website, and I'll put it in the show notes, a link to how that's calculated. But there's strength of schedule. There's extended strength of schedule. There's a whole bunch of stuff. And then there's software that I keep hearing about as being bad. Now, I don't know if it's FFG software that they make or they license. The term that came up with this regional was the cryodex. I have no idea what that is. I'm assuming that's some software that calculates strength of schedule and extended strength of schedule and all that stuff. For those of you who haven't even competed, that makes the difference on whether or not you go on after the rounds that you have. They call that Swiss, where you play an opponent's 35-minute time limit. You, after you play, you fill out a slip of paper called a match slip. You initial it. The player that you played initials it. Whoever won usually goes to take it in, which is nice. They don't make the loser do that because there's a chance somebody rips it up, throws it in the garbage. Not in Destiny, of course, but in other places, you got to worry about that. I digress. Point is, they calculate this where you are in terms of your play in Swiss, and then they have a cut. So by cut, that means it's usually the top 8, and there are guidelines that Fantasy Flight Games has for those who have tournaments, how you're supposed to calculate that. So regardless of that, they, at this event, it looks like they made the decision to go to 16. So the cut was 16. It does that. All of this doesn't really matter. What matters is what happened afterwards. Didn't happen to be the player who was in 17th place. And there's some details in here. They're not referring to that person. And this isn't about the people themselves right now. It's going to sound like it, but it's not. The bottom line is somebody didn't make the cut. A friend of the person who didn't make the cut, I'm not sure. I think they were playing as well, really became, it sounds like, belligerent or shouted. And there was some shouting that happened, and there were some inappropriate words that were said. Bottom line, it got out of hand. And that was reported that the person who escalated things, who was asked to leave or chose to leave, whatever it was, made a threat. And the threat was something around bringing a weapon and coming back and doing something bad. So that happened. I'm sure it was a really uncomfortable environment after that. I'm sure if no one wants that to happen, I would hope nobody wants that to happen. I can guarantee you that the place that held the tournament didn't want that to happen. But the question is then what happens afterwards, right? And at the end of the day, if someone threatens somebody with violence, and we're at a point now in our world and in the time that this happened, that's it's never okay, but it's definitely not okay now. And it's never okay when that is taken over the top. And when you're threatening violence with a weapon or bringing a gun or saying you're going to do things and cause harm to people, like, that's never okay. It will always be something that needs to be dealt with. And the way you deal with that is you call the police. At the end of the day, that's what you do. And whether you run the store or you're in the store and you hear it, it is your responsibility to do that. It is. Because if you didn't do that, and I don't know this person, and I don't know if it happened or not because I wasn't there. But I'm saying if I was there and I did hear it, or I was outside, it was reported that it happened outside, and the restaurant owner next door heard it and made the call, like, that's the right thing to do. If that's what he heard, that is the right thing to do immediately. Because if you don't do that and then something happens, that everyone's lives are changed forever over a game. Here's why I talk about this. There was 28 posts in the Reddit. This was also discussed on Fantasy Flight's site. And I don't know what the result is, right? And I don't know if I need to be privy to that, but I need to know that there's a system in place that deals with it. I need to know that Fantasy Flight has a method for dealing with that. Now, here's the problem. I don't know if they do. I flat out don't know if they do. I know that I have a link, and there will be a link in the show notes to a page that talks about suspensions and suspended players. And I know that. But the question is, how does that get updated? Ultimately, what is it? Right? How do you report somebody to that? I don't know. It's not something that is widely publicized. You know, tournament regulations, if you look at their website for Destiny, like, this hasn't been an issue. Now, it hasn't been an issue I haven't been to a lot of tournaments. And I can tell you that people get fired up about this stuff. You know, people complain and get salty, but, making a threat to that degree. And I know that there are people, and I would love to hear their take. And I this isn't please, it's not calling anybody out. It's not meant to, but I want to hear from the people that help shape the game. And that's our content creators. And we have a lot of educators in this community. And that doesn't mean that we're better or worse than you if you're not. But what you need to know is somebody who's been in education for 25 years, that's all we talk about at times, is around student safety and safety of our buildings and how to react to that. Like, there's no hesitation. You have no hesitation. Like, there is protocol. You deal with that immediately. And it's you keeping people safe, but it's getting the authorities. Like, you're not a judge. You're not a jury. You're not a police officer. Maybe you are. I don't know. But, like, stuff has to happen, like, right then and there. And not doing that is just part of the problem. Part of the problem. Why do I bring this up? Well, because I think it needs to be discussed. I think it needs to be discussed because I've got a daughter that comes to me to a place to play. That's a friendly place that I don't see that ever happening. But when you're playing in a tournament with 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 people, bad things happen. And they can happen. So what's the system in place to deal with that? Now, I'm going to go back to Magic for a second. Whether you're sick of that or not, that's beside the point. The deal is this is a community that has dealt with this and still deals with it now. So they have something called the DCI. And so the DCI, basically, you get assigned a number and that number goes with you where you go. So when you register for things, like there's a way to know who you are. Now, I don't know what the requirements are for this tournament in Denver or a tournament in Hungary or a tournament in Florida. It sounds like you can use your own software, and it sounds like you can use your own match slips, and it sounds like you could be anybody you want to be. So how do you know who you are? It sounds like a weird question, right? But how do you know who you are in Destiny? What is the way that you're identified? And if this actually happened, what is to stop this from happening again? What is a consequence that can happen, like never playing again in one of these tournaments? Because that person can go play tomorrow. Really, it sounds like the place, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like the people who were there and took this very seriously, by the way, and the reaction I've read, all of those things sound like there's no right or wrong thing, but it sounds like they were proactive in what they did. That all that stuff was sent to FFG, so it sounds like there is a place for that to happen. There's a protocol for that to happen. So that's key. And me not knowing that, my ignorance to that, that's on me. I don't mean to be critical of Fantasy Flight on that. And I care about the game, clearly. To make a podcast or Twitch stream or, to do any content creation for this or invest hundreds of dollars, well, thousands, but into the game, we want to see it be successful. And that's the special, everyone talks about it. I love talking to Mike Rudin about it. Mike, the Rebel Spy, and how different this community is. And I'd never played Yu-Gi-Oh! Or I didn't play Pokemon or all those other things. Just played Magic. And I think I got out of Magic before it got really, really, really big. But, I hear about how salty it is and how toxic it can be. And, you see that online all the time. And maybe it's because the game is small that now it's starting to grow and more people are playing it. And this is just going to happen. It's the nature of the beast. Here's the problem. If an incident did happen, if God forbid, and thank God it didn't, but if that was the person was actually going to act on that and something happened, it's over. Like this is over before it started. And nobody wants that. And I don't care as long as people are safe. Like if the game never was played again and I lost all my investment, whatever, if everybody was safe, come on. That's not what I'm saying. The point is though, that the community that we have might not be able to take that type of a happening or an event. Because then it's, in the news at a Star Wars Destiny tournament that something horrific happened. And you're going to let your kid play that game? It's the game's fault. You and I know that's not the case. It's people's fault. But that's what could happen. So how do we know who you are when you play the game? There's got to be a better system for that. And there is responsibility on the place where the tournaments are. However, it can't be all on them. It can't be all on them. And there has to be some sort of a mechanism that we're all aware of, because I'm not. And I know there's a place on their site, and I'm trying to pull that up as we're talking here, where that information is. And it just can't, man, where the heck is it right now? It's not easy to find. I can tell you that. I'm just going to search for banned players, Fantasy Flight games. Let's see what comes up. There it is. FFG. So that It was pretty easy to find. I just typed in banned players FFG, so that's good. And it's the Fantasy Flight Games organized play participant suspension policy. Now, nowhere do I have to sign anything when I play in this tournament. I just pay my money and go. And by the way, shout out to our friends over at Millennium Games in Rochester who did a great job. And every time I've played at Just Games in Penfield where I play, it's amazing. And the people are great. So please know that. And I didn't play in Denver. Okay, isn't Denver the place where 420 happens and everything's like, everyone's got to be chill out there? Evidently not. But here's what it says in the website. Oh, by the way, it's Discard or Reroll, if you didn't know that already. We're a podcast about Dice and Card Game. And send us an email, questions@discarderreroll.com. Fantasy Flight Game, we were supposed to have guests too, but Mike's buying a car and Jay was at work. Fantasy Flight Games considers event integrity to be a vital element of organized play. Plus, they don't want to have this. This is a tough conversation to have, by the way. This isn't all that fun. Okay, I digress. Speaking of fun, participation in the fun and excitement of an official FFG organized play of official FFG organized play is a privilege extended to players and event officials alike. The FFG organized play participant suspension policy is designed to support all participants in a shared effort to maintain event integrity. This sounds good. Organized play exists to create a fair, safe, and inclusive environment for competition and enjoyment of our games. A violation of any of those elements undermines the integrity of that event and, by extension, the global player community. When that violation is deemed intentional or habitual, FFG may revoke the privilege of participation in official organized play by issuing a suspension to that participant. So, it sounds like they become aware of an incident, which it sounds like they were. I'm guessing there's a mechanism for that. I don't know what it is, but I don't need to because I'm not hosting tournaments. But hopefully those people in Denver know what that is. They conduct an investigation, and then they may issue a suspension. They won't confirm nor discuss any past or ongoing investigations beyond directing all such inquiries to the current FFG organized play participant suspension policy. So in other words, they're saying, you won't know what we do until somebody's name goes on the site. By the way, I'm learning as we go along. We're all going to learn. It says right here, whenever an organizer disqualifies a participant from an official FFG organized play event, they should collect statements and other evidence along with contact information from all relevant parties. The organizer will also compose a statement themselves advising how serious the violation was and outlining their process in deciding to disqualify that participant. Immediately after the event, the organizer will include that information in an email to organizedplay@fantasyflightgames.com with disqualification report in the subject line. Now, I don't know how fast they deal with that. If the subject line was threatened gun violence, disqualification report, I would think they would open it. And I sure as heck hope they would. And then they deal with it. And then there's other things. Now, at the bottom of this, you can appeal it, and then there's a suspended participant list. Right now, there's 4 people. And one person can start playing in 2020 in August. One person can start playing again in May. One person is the end of August in 2020. And then one person's a lifetime ban. And if you Google those people, you can find out what they did. And one of them's on a stream for Team Covenant, and the guy was drawing cards left and right in a game. I don't even know what the game is, truthfully. I didn't even know they made it. I'm lucky enough that I know they're making this. Destiny. What is it? I'm going to find out the name for you. The game is... I don't know what the heck the game is. It doesn't even say. It's not X-Wing. No, maybe that was X-Wing. There was a bunch of them. It's X-Wing seems to be the first one. So there you go. You can get on the list. And the last time it was updated was July 19th, 2017. So they've had a pretty good run. The issue that Magic has right now, by the way, is people who are judges and background checks. Now, I want you to think about that for a minute. People who are judges in Magic, I want you to think about people who play Destiny. Now, we're not talking like Worlds, right? We're talking casual tournaments or any tournament that maybe a judge would be present. Could be regional. Are there kids there? Did you see kids at them? I did. And if there's somebody judging those in smaller venues who might have a criminal record or done some pretty bad things Yeah, we want to give everybody a second chance, and I'm for that. That's why I got into education in the first place. But I got news for you. Not on my Saturday, I don't. On Saturday, I take a break from that. On Saturday, I want to make sure that I go to a place that's been vetted, and the people have been vetted, and it's safe. It's my job as a parent to keep my kids safe. But, there's an understanding of assumed safety when you go to a place. And it's hard to maintain that. So, what am I saying? What I'm saying is I want there to be a better way for them to track me, to track the places I play, the behavior. Should I have any issues? Again, it's all relative. It's all relative. And you know what? You don't want to be in a place where it becomes ridiculous, that you can't be competitive. And, what's acceptable to one person might not be acceptable to another. I might swear a couple times, but and that may be over the line for the player I'm playing against, and you don't want to be doing that anyway. But it's not about that. It's about having an opportunity to know that if a player makes threats against the building of which it's being held, and police had to be called to intervene, and it's not about, it has nothing to do with the top 16, like whether it was 8 or 16 or the software that was used, like that's all irrelevant. It's all irrelevant. All that matters is that everybody's safe. And when you make a threat a week and a half or 2 weeks after what happened in our country at a school, that you're going to do that. Again, allegedly, I wasn't there. What's the recourse? And how do I know that now that I know that event happened, and I'm not going to know the details because it's not going to be shared, but how do I know that that person's not going to play at my event? Because I don't want to play with that person. All that being true, I don't want to play next to that person. You can go play somewhere else. Could be a great person. It really could be. And it could have been a really heated moment, and everybody makes mistakes. But that mistake takes it to a different level. And I don't need to be around that mistake. I choose that. I choose to invest my resources and time and in assumed safety. And, it is very hard when that happens. It's hard to de-escalate yourself. I've seen it on streams. And, sometimes here's what I worry about. By the way, this is Discard to Reroll, a podcast about internet safety. That when you see people and players who, again, getting salty, the ability to flip a table in Tabletop Simulator, that culture, the difference when it's funny and it can be extreme. I'm podcast with people who it's extremely funny. And so that's my enjoyment. Trust me, this is not about that. We know the difference here. But people who can get really out of control, who have a really tough time managing those emotions, and people who tend to be gamers around this subject matter or the competitive scene may have, this is an overgeneralization, but the social aspect of how we interact can be difficult. I'm trying to say this delicately. I'm not saying you. I'm saying that can be difficult. You know what I'm talking about. And that probably is more prevalent in a bigger community or in a different type of community. I don't see it as much in Star Wars. It's one of the things, honestly, that draws me to the game. But yeah, there's got to be a system. And all it took, let me tell you something, and please understand, I believe this with every ounce of fiber in my being. All it took was for something bad to happen, something tragic to happen, and this would be a whole different conversation. And there wouldn't be a podcast or a live stream or anybody, even if they didn't play the game, that wouldn't be talking about this and what vendors do, whether it's Wizards of the Coast or it's FFG or Asmodee, or it doesn't matter the vendor, what can they do? What's within their purview, what's within their ability, what are the methods that they use? Because like to keep players safe. That would be the topic, and it could destroy a company. It could. Something horrible it just could rip things apart. Most importantly, the people who were affected by it, like directly. And that's what I care about. I do. Very much so. And I was really disturbed by that. And I just couldn't, and I had a little bit of a break. I started this podcast last week, and I don't want to bring anybody else on because I don't want anybody taking any heat over this. This is my opinion. And I don't want it to be misconstrued that it's anyone else. But I deal with kids all day long for a long period of time for a lot of years. And I know a lot of you, hopefully that listen, do as well. And whatever role it is, as a parent, as somebody in Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or your Kiwanis or in your school district, if you work or if you go to school, if you're a student, if you're at a college, like this is the reality that we're in right now. And it doesn't matter whether it's destiny or it's foosball at a bar. The idea that I'm going to elevate this conversation by saying something to the degree of a threat, like that matters, because it used to just be words and you could ignore it. But do you want to be the one that ignores it when something happens? Because that's going to change everybody's life forever. And I love this game, but I don't like it that much. I don't like it more than my family. I don't care how I roll. And I roll bad. Not as bad as Sir Christopher, by the way, who rolled like double blanks 4 times in a row and did a great YouTube video about it. But, people struggle. People struggle. Depression was real then. It's real now. And you don't know what a player in front of you is going through. So your reaction, like we shouldn't have to be in a place where we worry about, like, if I make a play that's going to upset my opponent, that he or she is going to just go bonkers on me. Like, that can't be the environment we're in. It doesn't matter what game we play. So there you go. I don't know that it's sombering. And I've done this a few times. Here, fun fact. Sometimes I have these conversations with myself in the car. You talk about somebody needing help. I need help. I need some serious help just to play this conversation through. And each time I would do it, it just doesn't sound great. It doesn't feel good. And when it's done, I just get sad. This is a fun podcast, but I'm sad. I'm sad for the people who were there. I'm sad for everybody involved. I'm sad for the person who's been posting about it and saying that he didn't do it. I'm sad for that. I'm sad for the person who has to write this report. I'm sad for all the people that had to write pages of stuff. And if you want to see that, I'll link to the Reddit. I'm not going to link to the other one on Fantasy Flight Games. You can just go search that. It's just not moderated over there. Like, I don't know who's looking at this stuff. And I don't need to know the result, but I need to know that somebody's involved. And part of my worry, anytime I would say something critical, is that people, if anyone from Fantasy Flight Games listens, I don't know whether they do or don't. You know why I don't? Because I've never heard from them. I don't want to offend anybody there, because I think that they probably have a number of people, a very limited number of people who are doing the best they can. And by the way, the best they're doing is amazing, because I freaking love this game. So they need to know that. This is something, though, that's got to be talked about. I hope they talk about it regularly. If they don't, it just took one thing to happen in Denver. And by the way, things have happened in Denver like this that are terrible. And we're not talking about the Broncos. Like, terrible thing. That's all it took. And I just want to know, all I care about is that you can't prevent it. You can't. You can try. You can try. And I think you create a positive climate. You can try to prevent this from happening as much as you want. But I just need to know there's a plan in place and it's being addressed. And ask me who I am. Like, you don't need my social security number, but you should give me a number. right? Hand them out. I don't care if I get the last one, but I should have a little cool, by the way, it could be a cool little ID card. You could do something really sweet. I don't have one of those. Give me one. So that if I behave that way, or to the level of cheating where I draw extra cards, or I'm whatever, baking my dice and you know that, or whatever, salting them, any of those things, like I shouldn't be allowed to compete, because let's keep it fair and fun and engaging and keep this community going. Because the real reason why people want to create content, and I could name 10 content creators off the top of my head right now who have invested of themselves and relationships have formed because of the game. You just want to see it continue. And you want to make sure people are safe doing it. And you want it to be family positive, and whatever. We all make mistakes. And I'm not, all this is alleged because I wasn't there. But it doesn't matter, because it's not about that, thankfully, in this context. It's about what's the plan in place and how's that dealt with. And it sounds like, after reading that thing that I did from their website, that there is something. And it sounds like the people who organized the event knew about that and sent that stuff in. But anyway, I just want to keep everybody safe. So I'm sure you could think positively about that, or think I'm way off, and that it's, we're just overblowing it. And maybe so. Maybe this incident's overblown. I don't think keeping people safe is overblown. And you talk to anybody who's been part of that in an incident that's happened, and you won't even be able to look them in the face and say that. And I've seen those people and had to deal with that. And I just don't want to see that happen in a hobby. It's just, A, it's not worth it. And B, you just don't want to go down that road. I'm just going to leave it at that. It's a great podcast, everybody. Hope it's a lot of fun. Join our Patreon, because then you can get depressed talking about violence in Star Wars Destiny. It's a lot of fun. And here's depressing. Ready for depressing? I sent out all of our Patreon rewards, like 95% of them. There's a couple of you. I know who you are in Hawaii. You're about to get yours. And a few people overseas. And Jason Belt's my buddy in Rochester, right down the road. The mailman from Rochester tells me you got a spelling error on your Yoda alt art. That is an awesome feeling when you do that. Well, guess what? That's a collector's item, because I'm going to send out all new ones, because they should be here soon. The problem is it takes like 14 days to get the new ones, even if you fix one thing. And I looked at that thing 100 times. Big fat bummer. But anyway, thank you to all of you who continue to support us. Just want to put that out there. I did get an email. I want to make sure that we read some of those things that came in. And let me find that here. Am I crazy even talking about this? I feel like I want to make sure that really not meant to be critical of people and how things are handled, and even the person themselves that this incident that is wrapped up in this whole thing. It's just about, I just want an ID card that you need. I really do. Anyway, this one came from Wayne. Wayne, I want to say thank you for sending. He just said some really amazing things. Wayne, thank you for all of that. I really, really appreciate it. He's very interested in this game. First table card game ever. His son, age 10, is into Pokemon. Oh boy, Pokemon. Plays once a week. So over a month ago, while I was playing one night, looked at Imperial Assault, Armada, FFG, ended up buying the 2-player kit Destiny, an X-Wing starter set, and just got super jazzed about it. Talked about Crime Lord and Millennium Falcons. That's all it takes, man. I just was on a podcast called The Chance Cube, which I'm sure you've heard of that before. And by the way, they do that live now on Twitch. So if you want to see this ugly mug, you can go over to The Chance Cube and just Google that and you'll be able to see it on Twitch. And talked about how addicting the game is. It just is so addicting. It's so addicting. And I'm at the point now, I digress from Wayne's awesome email, but I'm at the point now where you start to have enough knowledge of the game and you start to do the crafting, like the deck crafting and stuff. And that's where the stuff, you just get consumed. I mean, I couldn't be more consumed, but then I could be more consumed, because then you're trying to put deck lists together and, it's bad. It's really bad. And they pulled Yoda's, like, rub it in, Wayne, rub it in. Says, thank you very much. Questions. All right. Can you talk about how the Hyperloop running interference combo there, how do you deal with that? He said he just got destroyed by someone locking him out doing that stuff. How do you deal with it? You take their cards and you run. That's number one. I should ask Jack from another podcast, which is great. It's the Golden Dice. He's a dirty animal playing that deck. How do you deal with it? Well, there's a few ways you deal with it. Close quarters assault. That's how you deal with that. You discard it out of their hand. I think that card removal, much like in OTK, which is another one of those decks that can just burst, that you get it out of their hands. Switch over to OTK for a second. You know, the card I want out of their hand, if you see a leadership and you see a price of failure, take the leadership. Discard that. The price of failure, let them kill their Night Sister. That's fine. Thanks. They're doing work for you. Running interference and that combo. If they don't have the card, you're in luck. And I think it's never tell me the odds is the card you want to get out of there. You know, the running interference is one thing. There's ways around that, but like it's the switching the dice, the never tell me the odds, and then just destroying your face. So that I think that's where you want to be. And there's lots of cards that do that, going after their hand. So that's where I would be, for sure. What's the one? Let me bring it up here from Legacies. I just got to bring up my deck list here. It's coming up here. The cards. I want to go to Legacies, and I want to bring the color. I'm not going to find it right now. It's not scruffy looking nerf herder, is it? Yeah, it's scruffy looking nerf herder. So there's one. So again, you got to be playing yellow here. It sounds like. Choose one of the following card types: event, support, or upgrade, and look at an opponent's hand. Discard a card of the chosen type from it. Here's what you're going to pick. You're going to pick event. Pick event. That costs 1. That's a great card. It's a Legacies card. It's card 120, in case you put them in order. How about a card? Let's see if this comes up here. What's interference? Running interference. See if I can find that. That's a 0 cost, right? Well, there's a card called Rend. Rend. Let me see if I can find it. Rend. Am I spelling that wrong? R. Why is that not coming up? What did I do wrong? Cards. Advanced search. Rend. There it is. Rend. Sometimes the database gets a little tricky. So Rend says discard a support or upgrade that costs 0 from play. So if you feel like that's a big deal for you, and that's something that you want to stop, you tech for it. So they call it deck teching. It sounds really inappropriate, but it's not. Deck teching's all right in our context. So Rend's a great card. Discard cards from their hand. Scruffy looking nerf herder. Those types of cards. Close quarters assault. That card's been hot. Close quarters. Trying to type it in now. Sorry for the typing sound. Close quarters assault. That's neutral. Gray. That means you can play whatever. It costs zip. It really only helps if you're playing cards with melee. Count the number of dice you have showing melee. Discard that many random cards from an opponent's hand. Nasty. It's a nasty card. Big time. Yep. How about this one? It's in my hand right now. Hear that? That's the sound of goodness. It's blue. It's villain. It's 2 cost. It's called Abandon All Hope. Force an opponent to choose to either lose all of their resources or discard all cards in their hand. That's nasty. Costs 2, but it's nasty. So that's where I'm there. And then kill Sabine as fast as possible. That's what I say. Again, Jack from Golden Dice will probably give me different advice. And if you want to head over to the Twitter, Jack, go ahead and put it down. You play the deck. How do I beat you with it? How do I beat you? I know there's a way to do it. But great question there. And the rest of your email. Has Ancient Lightsaber always been extremely high value? Yes. Yeah, it absolutely is. And look at this. He said, I love the segment you did on how much is Yoda and Ancient. They're going up. They did. You know, those cards are, Ancient is amazing. And I was talking to Jay from Double Blanks, and he said, so on the podcast I was on recently, the topic was budget decks. And so he sent me a couple names, and Ancient Lightsaber's in there. And he said, well, Ancient Lightsaber is in pretty much any competitive deck. And it is. If it's blue, you're playing Ancient Lightsabers. You know, that card is just so good, and its sides are so good, and the healing is so good. Like, it's killer. It's killer. It's almost worth, like, Empire at War packs. If you're buying packs, like if you walk into a store, like I would still, I mean, I've got plenty of legacies now, except for my second Yoda. I would buy Empire at War packs just to see if I can pull a saber. That's how good I think that card is. Big time. Just have the last show. I haven't heard a lot of talk about vehicles. So one more question was on vehicles. Yeah, vehicles are a thing, no doubt. Here's what I think you're going to see. Worlds, here's my prediction. Vehicles are going to be a big thing. They're going to be a big thing. In trilogies, you're going to see them be even bigger. So I think vehicles are definitely here to stay. They're budget friendly, so you could put those decks together. And maybe we'll have a vehicles player come on the podcast, not just me spouting off about it. But really, I want to say, Wayne, thank you. It was a very thoughtful email, and I really appreciate that. And you can do that too, by the way. You send an email. It's questions@discard2reroll.com. That's where you send those things. Sarah Evans, I want to say thanks to Sarah. Sarah, by the way, if you get it over to Etsy, I'll put a link in the show notes too, Sarah. She makes some tokens and stuff that's just killer. Really, really good. So head over to Etsy and follow that link and check out her stuff. Tokens. It's really, really good. She was in London Regionals and she was top 4. Congratulations. And what did she play? Boba Phasma. Great deck. And she showed off her swag. She got the little Ray mat. She got, is that Thrawn? Like that alt art Thrawn? Nice. Good stuff. Let's see. First this is the London Regionals. First was Epo Ayla. Kylo E Mother was second. And then her, Phasma Boba, and 5 Dice Villain. How about that? 5 Dice Villain. But congratulations there again. Head over to her site on Etsy if you want some cool tokens. A lot of people, when I was in the regional, loved seeing all this stuff in the tokens. I've got some opinions on double-sided damage counters. That's bad. Double-sided damage counters are not good. Sarah, if you make those, I apologize. But that's not a great idea because the way these dice roll all over the place, you knock those things over. Tiny Grimes can get salty in a good way, by the way, Tiny, if you listen. But he talked a lot about that. Like, I don't want to have to figure out what I'm looking at. It's hard enough for me to play the game without worrying about, is that a token? Is that a resource? Is that a damage counter? Is it on a 3? Was it on a 3? Is it on a 1? Like that. If you do that intentionally to confuse me, that's cheating. That's cheating straight up. So don't make your tokens that hard to read. That'd be bad. I had a question, and this question came from Mark from Chicago, out of all places. Mark, thank you. Mark wanted to know if there's any formats to do some sealed with only one other player. So 2-player. I have an answer for you. There is a way to do that. It's called Winchester. It's Winchester. Now, I think I had heard Sugi from Knights of Ren, by the way, another great podcast, talking about doing some stuff with cubes and Rochester formats and Winston formats and Winchester. Winchester is what you want to do. Now, this again goes back to Magic, the Gathering, but most things do when it comes to this stuff. By the way, just credit where it's due. 2011, Gabriel Nassif was the guy that basically combined what was called Rochester Draft, which we won't get into now, with Winston Draft, which we won't get into now, but to create Winchester. And in Reddit, there's some good comments about that. Pillars Blizz. I'm not sure if that's his real name or if it even is a he or a her, or it doesn't even matter. All of that. It's just Pillars Blizz had a really good post about Winchester and did some sort of a modification for Tabletop Simulator so you could do that, which is killer. Like, that's awesome. So basically, I'm going to summarize Winchester for you. The way that, and this is from Pillar's post, so I want to make sure that he gets credit for that, or she, or whoever, that you take 8 packs of cards. You have 4 packs, and your opponent has 4 packs. You have the Rivals draft set, by the way, so you each have to have that. Once you have that, that's your investment. You open up the cards, right? So you can do pack at a time. It's fine. And there's some talk about, do you tell somebody, do you show the dice right away or do you not show the die? Like, do you open them all up and see the die ahead of time to like give you a little bit more information on like what's coming? And that could add a little bit of an element to it. Let's pretend that you don't do that, right? So let me play this out. You each have 4 packs. They're the same. They don't have to be the same packs of cards, but probably should be. You open the pack and you're going to do, in front of you is going to be 2 piles. So just do it in the same order so that it kind of matches up. So you and your opponent both open a pack. You flip down 1 card. These are face up in front of you in 1 pile. So start with the rare, which I believe in Legacies are on the bottom. I know they were for Empire War. So at the bottom, you pull that out. That's your rare. Put the die aside. And then in pile 2 for you, you have your uncommon. All right, makes sense? And then your opponent is going to do the same thing. In 1 pile, they're going to have their rare. And in the second pile, they're going to have their uncommon. And then what you do is you have the first person go. And they pick 1 pile of the 4. So let's say Yoda gets turned. All right, they're probably going to pick that, unless you have some other rules afterwards. But they'll probably pick the Yoda. Maybe not, but I would, because I need a second one. And then, so now you have 3 piles. It's only a pile of 1 in front of you. You have 2 in front of you. Let's say he opened the Yoda. So one of his piles is empty. The second pile has 1 card in it, which is uncommon, right? Because that's how they open them up. And then you have your rare in front of you and your uncommon. And then you take 2 more cards. So now he's going to take, or she's going to take 2 cards from that pack. Those are going to be commons. Common 1 goes in the pile that doesn't have any cards in it, because that's where the Yoda was. Now the next one goes in the second pile, which has an uncommon in it. So now it's got a common and an uncommon in that pile. And you keep them exposed. Again, sounds weird, but you keep them so you can see what's in the pile. Or you can look through them. I think it's easier just to like splay them out. And then in your pile, you have a rare, and now you put a common on yours, and then you have an uncommon and a common. And now it's your pick. What do you want to take? See how this changes? So now let's say you take the rare and a common, and then you do it again. You've got 1 more common, which goes in your pile now that's empty, and then that your opponent does that. So now there's a pile in front of him or her with 2 commons in it. You open up the next pack, and now a rare goes in that next pile. So now he's got a pile in front of him that's got a rare, a common, and an uncommon in it. And you've got a pile that's got the same thing. And see how it just goes from there. And these piles get bigger. The decisions get more intense. You have some information about what the other player's drafting, so you can draft around that. And it's just super fun. It goes a lot quicker. You're making less decisions, but the decisions are more meaningful. And having that information takes a little bit of the randomness away. Takes a little bit of that randomness away. And there's that saying that inefficient destiny is the best destiny. Well, you don't want to get too inefficient. And I think this is that right balance, because you've got enough knowledge and it rewards players for knowing the cards, but you have enough randomness that it makes it really exciting. And you can do draft. And you're both expanding your card pool and hopefully getting cards that you need. And if you just, just give your cards to the other person if you don't need them at the end of the day. So that's my suggestion to you, Mark from Chicago, is that you try Winchester. And if you do, let me know how it is. Have you ever played that before? Pillars, by the way, I'll put that post in the show notes. That's a really, and I know there's lots of other formats that you can play. And it sounds like Sugi there from Knights of Ren really knows a lot about those. So I'd love to talk to him. Maybe that's the guy we talk to about that. But I think that the different types of formats are really exciting for me. And it brings a really cool element to the game. And now with that rival set, I mean, the world's our oyster, people. The world is our oyster. So thank you for that. And let's see, so with the time, I thought we were going to get a guest in here, but that's not going to happen. So what are we at here time-wise? Let me do one more thing. So the feedback has been coming in around Trilogies. Like, people want to hear more about Trilogies. And I'd love to, because I think the exciting thing about Trilogies is the size of the card pool getting smaller with more balanced cards. Does that make sense? So like, getting smaller in a card pool, if Spirit of Rebellion were the cards, makes it so that I want to put forks in my eyeballs. Getting a smaller card pool with the game really progressing to where it is now makes it really exciting. So what does that mean? Well, it means that when you're playing Trilogy, the options are less and they become much greater of an impact when you're picking your cards. So let me just break this down for you and give you an example, and then we'll talk about this more in the next show. Trilogy Yellow. Let's talk about yellow. If you're playing in standard or whatever they call the other one, I forgot what it's called. Standard or it's not legacy. Maybe it is legacy. I don't know. Tell me that I'm crazy. I'm tired. I apologize. I lost a lot. That was an emotional beginning. I'm sorry for that. I apologize for that right off the top. It was really bothering me, and I'd love to have some dialogue with you about it. I'd be happy to have you on to talk about it if you have a strong opinion about it, or you were there, and less about shaming anybody or pointing fingers. It's more about the solution. I want to be solution focused on that. All right, I digress. When we're talking about yellow, if we're playing in standard right now, you've got a lot of options. I'll tell you how many. You've got 87 total, like the yellow events. Let's talk about events. We keep hearing about easy pickings, like being the card. Yellow is just, I said it from day one, and I'm going to give credit to the Rebel Spy, Mike Rudin, right? All that vegan food out there has really got his head in the right place. He was all over yellow and easy pickings too. Big time. So if we break that down though, 87 total yellow events. If you're playing yellow now in standard, that's 29 hero, 30 neutral, and 28 villain. So that means if you're playing hero, you've got 59 events to choose from. I'm going to give you a little more information. You ready for this? Get your calculators out. Get your pencils. Sharpen them up. I'll wait. 29 zero cost events, 21 one cost events, 4 two cost events, and 5 3 cost events. So you have 29 zero cost events to choose from. Like, you've got options. I mean, between the one cost and the zero cost, you've got tons of options. Villain, by the way, it's about the same. Like, there's a lot to balancing this game. We all give them crap. It's easy to give people garbage when you're not doing it. But like the people who make this game and play test this game, like it's hard. It's hard. There you go. Hashtag it's hard. Villains, 58 total events, neutral and villain. So you got 28 zero cost, 23 one cost, 3 2 cost, 3 3 cost, and 1 5 cost. What's that 5 cost? I forgot what that was. It was a disaster, that 5 cost. Pilfered goods, isn't that what it is? I got to check that out. What's the 5 cost yellow event? Let's go. We're going to search for this. And by the way, next episode, we're going to talk a little bit about the resources that we use to make our decks in Star Wars Destiny database. And there's one from Amoeba Games, which is a little hidden gem that I'm going to tell you about next week. I want to search for the card. I think it's Pilfered Goods. How about if I get that right? Pilfered Goods. We're going to search. Pilfered Goods. Here we go. Pilfered Goods is coming up. 5 cost. If I had my bell sound effect, I'd do it. Ding. That's Villain, Rogue, Uncommon. You may play an upgrade from your hand for free on each of your yellow characters. Please help me understand when that ever would happen. When is that good? I would love to know. I'm sure there's got to be a place that's good, and I'm sure you can take advantage of that, but I haven't seen it yet. Anyway, so that's a little bit of a breakdown for what it is pre-trilogy. Now let's talk about trilogy. If you take it in trilogy, here's where it becomes a challenge. In trilogy, you've got 25 total yellow events, 12 neutral, 6 hero, and 7 villain. 6 hero and 7 villain. This takes 2-player set, which is nothing. Tinker. What's tinkering? Is that Rivals? There's nothing. There's no yellow in the 2-player. So what do you got? Here, I'm going to break it down for you. If you want the neutrals, here's your neutral events. If you're going to play yellow in trilogy, you can choose from. You got Bamboozle. These are 0 cost. Bamboozle, Dangerous Maneuver, Hasty Exit, which I'm seeing that played a lot, Quick Draw, Well Connected, and Tinker. That's 6 0 cost. If you want to go up for a buck, Cantina Brawl, Counter-Strike, Face Off, Lure, and Vandalize. Well, that's why Vandalize is played all the time. It's really good, but that's why it's played. And then for 2 cost, Entangle. That's your removal. So, removal's hard to find. So if you're playing hero, could you play Entangle, Vandalize, then go to the hero specific? You got Impulsive and Smuggler's Run. That's 2 total for 0 cost. And then you get to the amazing cards, Easy Pickings, and scruffy looking Nerf Herder. Those are amazing. And then for 2 costs, you got Explosive Tactics and Bravado. That's 3 cost, actually. Villain. What are your zero cost villain? It's In Pursuit, No Good to Me Dead, and Take Flight. I don't know if you're playing any of those. And then for 1, you got Free for All, Rumors, and Subdue. And then for 2, you have Delve. So guess what? You're playing Hero Yellow in terms of that, in Trilogy anyway. I mean, unless you know something I don't. And then what are your character options? Let's talk about that for a second. And then we'll call it a day. You got Hero, you got Han Solo. He's got a movie coming out, by the way. I don't know if you know that. Hondo. I loved him in Star Trek. Jar Jar Binks, Jedha Partisan, Saw Gerrera, and Zeb. I want to make Zeb great. I know he's good, but how good is he? Is he good in Trilogies? Is it Zeb Yoda? I'm working on something. I'm going to get you ready. Here's a preview. Zeb Lobot. Red and yellow. It's about the red and yellow. A villain here. Bib Fortuna, Boba Fett, Dr. Aphra, Greedo, Hondo again, and Rebel Trader. So there's your options when you're playing yellow. Let's break that down. What do you think about yellow in Trilogy? Is it playable? Can you play villain yellow in Trilogy? And if so, what are you playing? Boba Fett's great, but Boba Fett's really great when you play it with some other cards that are not from Trilogy. I don't know. I don't know the right thing. Hondo's amazing. I mean, you got Hondo and Poe. It's a great deck. By the way, we talk about budget decks. That's a budget deck. Poe Hondo is a budget deck, and I think that deck's nasty. But I don't know how nasty it is in Trilogy. I need you to tell me that. What do you think about that? Tell me about Trilogy. Let's talk specifically about yellow. I broke it down for you in terms of events. Next week, we'll read some of that stuff and tell me what you think. We'll also get some people on the show. I know that Rebel Spy, he bought a new car tonight. Congratulations to him. I know that D House from the Jedi Trials had a baby. Congratulations to him. I know that that our friends over at the Golden Dice, our buddy had a baby over there too. Not Shane. Shane didn't have a baby. Congratulations over there. I got to find the name. It's escaping me right now, and I'm embarrassed that that's the case. That's what fatherhood does, people. Jack, I can't even remember. Isn't that terrible? I'm going to look it up right now. The Golden Dice. The Golden Dice, A Tale of Ancient Rome. No, that is not the podcast you want to listen to, because that would be very bad. Let's see. Here it comes. Here it comes. Tommy. God darn it. I'm sorry, Tommy. That's embarrassing. Tommy, episode 12 is online. Man, you guys crank it out over the Golden Dice podcast. So there you go. Good stuff. I want to hear about all the things you have to say about Star Wars Destiny. I want to hear what you have to say about yellow decks. I want to hear what Jack from the Golden Dice has to say about beating Sabine Ezra. I want to hear what you are doing for Worlds. Are you going? I wish we were going to be there. We're going to be there next year. I've already cleared it. I cleared it with the boss. And you know who the boss is, the real boss. We're not talking about Bruce Springsteen. We're talking about the lady upstairs right now who lets me podcast in the basement about Star Wars Destiny. And you're the boss too. Our patrons, I can't say thank you enough. You know, our high rollers. Anthony, I don't even know why you still support us. It means so much. Anthony needs to be on this program. Anthony, next week's your time. This is your chance to be on here. Lester, the Grumpy Jedi, this is your chance. Get your microphone. I don't care that you don't have a microphone. Go find one. We need to get you talking about trilogies on this. You're a high roller, for Christmas sakes. Get on this podcast. And the rest of you, thank you 100 times over. It means so much. Send us an email. It's questions@discardtoreroll.com. And we want to hear from you. We're going to go live next week too. It's going to be super exciting. It's also the break that some of you might celebrate, a holiday called Easter. Happy Easter to all of you. And I hope you have a relaxing break if you do have a chance to just reflect next week. Reflect on some Destiny too. Reflect on that we have a positive community, and we have to do our part to make sure everything stays that way. And the way that this community works, I'm proud to be a part of it. And remember, no matter what, above all else, I hope that all of your rerolls are special ones. We'll see you next week.